Okay, so we're about to review the 26-27 proposed budget. As always, we are informed when we decide what we're going to put together in our budget each year by our district mission and our district vision. Our district mission is to provide an excellent education, ensuring that all children maximize their potential, become contributing citizens, and pursue lifelong learning. And our vision is to be a community of excellence achieved through a commitment to high performance, morale, and involvement. So when we're thinking about our budget goals each year, we're thinking about that mission and vision, obviously always focused on education. That's our main purpose for existing. That's always what we have to measure any decisions by. Is it going to enhance or deter from student education? But at the same time, we have to think about the realities of budgeting and the costs of running a school district. And so we try to maintain a sustainable budget each year and obviously consider the taxpayers and have a reasonable tax levy. So the 26-27 proposed budget, our current budget in 25-26 is $46,651,344. Our proposed budget for 26-27 is $48,281,457. So if you look there, you see that we have a proposed spending decrease, but a proposed tax levy increase. So there's some explanations for why that all appears that way that I'm going to get into in the next couple of slides. But one important thing to remember when we think about the tax levy is that 1%, when we go out for a 1% increase in our district, that generates $90,774 with a 1% tax increase. So our revenue projections this year, and this is some of what is can be a little bit confusing. We have state aid sources. Last year, if you look at the top line, we had more state aid coming into the district, and then we do this coming year. That's for a variety of reasons, having to do with the fact that we were in a building project. We had greater expenditures in paying off that building project, but we were also generating more state aid that was specific to that building project. So even though our state aid was higher, it wasn't really going towards funding programs within the district. If we look at other revenues, we're projected to go up a little bit from $604,000 to $627,000 for the coming year. That would be an increase of $23,000. This coming year, our appropriated fund balance would be the same, $750,000. And this year, though, we will be needing to tap into reserves in the amount of $650,000. Our tax levy, again, if we go out for a 2.57 increase for the 26-27, would be $9,310,713. That is an increase to our budget, adding to our budget from the local tax levy of $233,264. So when you look at the distribution of what that money is going towards, each year we talk about the fact that we are very much dependent on state aid. And that is a big question mark right now. As you know, we've been waiting to get a budget from the state. It sounds like they are close to coming to some agreement on that. But when we have to put together a budget for our district, before we know what our definite state aid is going to be, we have to base it on projections. So the thing that we base our projections on is what the executive put out in her budget to begin with. So based on those numbers, total state aid in the coming year as part of the budget that we're proposing would be 76.52% of our budget. And again, just to back up and explain why that is, New York State collects state taxes across the state, and they distribute it to school districts so that school districts can fund, no matter what the tax base is in their communities, a reasonably equitable learning experience for students, no matter where they come from. So state aid is, you can see there, state aid building, transportation, BOCES, and categorical aid as a percentage of that 76% is about a quarter of our budget. The tax levy that we talked about there, that where we said, well, 1% gives us $90,000, that as a percentage of the budget, it's just short of 20% of our budget. And then fund balance, as we just mentioned, in the coming year would be 2.9% of the budget. There are some other revenue sources, and that's a small part of our budget each year. So by comparison between last year's budget and this year's budget, you can see that our projected aid is our projected program percentage of the budget. That's the green there, which is really the core foundational functioning of our school, which is the program, is 74% of our budget in this coming year. There are some changes to different parts of the budget, including the admin budget from year to year, having to do with the way that we'll break that out when we get into what the administrative budget covers. But there are some changes year to year that are, it doesn't mean that we've hired more people or we did anything like that. There are just some increased costs in those areas. But the important thing is, if we're thinking about our mission and our vision, then the important thing is that making sure that we're focusing all of the funding that we possibly can on the programming that impacts student learning. So the administrative component, the budget last year was just short of $4 million. The proposed budget is $4,242,422. That's a 6.39% change. In that categories include salaries and benefits of administrators, supervisors, and support staff, public information and central printing, legal services and insurance, Board of Education administrative costs, financial operations, BOCES administrative and capital costs. So there are lots of things within those categories that we're going to talk more about when we talk about the other categories that have gone up this year. Things like benefits and things like that have made some pretty significant jumps. The administrative component includes things right here like the Board of Education budget, central administration, finance, legal and printing, special items, curriculum categories, supervision, regular school, supervision, other school, employee benefits. And if you can see there in that last line, that's part of the reality of our world right now is employee benefits consistently going up from year to year. The capital component, this last year, $10,281,487 was our budget last year. Our proposed budget this year is just over $8 million. That's a 19.22% change. And again, if you look there, salaries and benefits, operation and maintenance and security, debt service on buildings, that as we discussed, we are coming off of a project, so that debt service on the buildings and capital projects is not on our books for the coming year. And so that's why there's a pretty significant change there. Capital component includes central services, special items, debt service, employee benefits, and interfund transfer. Program component, and again, this is the biggest part of our budget. So that includes salaries and benefits of teachers, counselors, aides, monitors, nurses, social workers, school psychologists, speech therapists, all sorts of people that work with students every day, programs for students with disabilities and special schools, mandated training and professional development for all of our staff, library, media, computer services, instructional hardware and software, textbooks, materials, everything that goes into the things that are used in the school system each day, student transportation, and athletics and co-curricular activities. And the increase projected here, you can see, is 3.93%. And just to back up there, I mean, that's increasing. Again, we're not increasing staff or anything in any of those areas. In fact, we've made some, belt tightening cuts wherever we possibly can. It's just the costs associated with the people and the things that we have to run our school. So again, more specifically, teaching regular school, if you look at the line by line, the cost increases, programs for students with disabilities, these things just always go up from year to year. I mean, in the programs for students with disabilities, just like when we have costs of our own staff here, those programs have to pay staff so that the costs go up. Teaching special schools is the same thing, and that is different each year depending on the students that we have in different programs. Instructional media, pupil personnel services, that's all the support services that we talked about, the therapists that work with students, athletics and co-curricular, public transportation, pupil transportation, BOCE, employee benefits, recreation, and interfund transfer. If you see employee benefits, there's a pretty significant jump there. The cost of health insurance is really made some pretty significant impacts on our budget this coming year. So this is a part where we all get educated on how our school taxes are calculated. Mr. Woodard?
All right. Favorite part of the presentation. How are my school taxes calculated? This is a very busy slide here. I'm going to try to break down basically how we go from our tax levy to that we use for running the school to how that relays to a tax rate in each municipality within our district. So again, just to recap, our current tax revenue that we get is a little over 9 million. And then how does that work out to each individual town? So if you start up top, and again, I know it's a busy slide. I like to just kind of focus on Barker on the left. I'll go down for that example because it's a little bit easier to follow. But first, we try to figure out every tax parcel within the district, and we need to know how much that's actually worth. So how much value of property is in the Whitney Point Central School District. And it's important to know that this first part of the formula is really determined by the town assessors. And that's important because we don't get reassessed every year. You know, sometimes I think the most recent, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, Lyle had a reassessment. There's municipalities up here that haven't had a reassessment in decades, right? And so what does that really mean? It means that when that assessor did assign that initial value, that value could have been from 30, 40 plus years ago, right? So obviously that's a problem when you're trying to equally spread out the tax base and have everyone pay their fair share. So the state recognizes that that's a problem. They can't insist that, you know, everyone gets reassessed every year. So they look at their data and their information on what they believe, how long ago the assessments have occurred versus where they think it should be. And they every year generate these equalization rates. So that's the second part of the formula. And what they're kind of saying is you add up all the property value in the town of Barker based off the last assessment, it's worth $92.1 million. The state says, but that's only about 71.5% accurate, right? It's really worth. That's where you see this first part of the formula, kind of calculate the true value of the property in Barker is 128.8 million. And so again, you'll see we spread that across all the municipalities. So we go from the last assessment of all the value in the Whitney Point Central School District, all 140 square miles. We're talking big numbers, right? $395 million of property. The state's saying, yep, but what it's really worth is $619 million. Again, these are massive numbers, right? So now that we know how much true value of properties in the town of Barker, now we can kind of see what is Barker's percentage of value compared to all the other value of property in the school district. And that's where we get our 20.8%. So Barker, their portion of the whole value in our school district is 20.8%. So from that, they should be responsible for paying 20.8% of our school tax levy, right? And that's where we get Barker residents should come up with 1.9 million of that $9 million tax levy. And then again, the last little part of this formula is really just you take that 1.9 million and you divide it by, you're going all the way up to the assessed value, right? The 92.1 million, and then you have to divide by 1,000. And that's where you get your tax rate. And you'll see these tax rates vary widely, and that's the reason, right? So Barker's tax rate, $20.51 per 1,000, is because they are roughly 71.5% assessed correctly, where you have some of these other ones I'll pick on, the town of Maine. Looks like they may have had the longest time since reassessment. Their value is only about 39% accurate. And you can see it's reflected, right, in that tax rate. The Barker, for $1,000 of assessed value, they're paying $20.51. For Maine, it looks way bigger, but it's because their assessed number is probably way smaller. Again, a lot on there, but try to break it down a little bit more in this next slide. All right, so this is a sample calculation. I picked out a few of municipalities within the district, and I think it's important just to go through how it's supposed to work. If everything's done the way it's supposed to be, one municipality, we're all assessed the way it should be. Well, that's the example category, right? In that green color there. So say again, I live in Whitney Point School, generic, right, municipality. I have $100,000 of value. I'm assessed. The state says, yep, that value is correct. It's 100%. It's really worth $100,000. Okay, so then we go through the formulas with the tax rates and the tax levy and how we distribute everything. What we're really saying is, if everything was completely accurate and assessed currently, the real tax rate in Winnie Point residents should be $14.66 per $1,000. Lots of numbers. Bear with me here. So now, knowing that, we're going to go through the examples of Triangle, Willett, and Nanticoke. And you can see, if we're going just off of the initial assessor, again, each one of these towns may have a different assessor. They're all assessed at $100,000 in these three municipalities. These are, again, the state telling us how accurate that is, right? The equalization rates, Triangle 69.96, Willett 60, Nanticoke's a little bit off the screen, but 40, I think, around there. And then, again, it's a simple formula, right? You divide 100,000 by that percentage, and we're saying the true value of a triangle, it's assessed at 100,000, it really should be taxed if it was 142,000. Same thing with Willett, it's assessed at 100,000. That property you were trying to sell it, you should get around 166,000. And then you can see the Nanticoke example. And again, just going back down, as from the previous slide, how those tax rates work, right? Triangle for $1,000 of value, because they're not quite at 100%. They're not at $14.66. They're at 20.96. You can see how that kind of plays out. So again, looking at one tax parcel in each one of these municipalities where they are assessed by the local assessor at $100,000, you can see their projected tax bill will vary greatly because of those equalization rates, right? So we have a bill for 2,000, 2,400, and on up. I like this slide. We saw this one earlier back in March when we were going through the tax levy limit calculation. But this is all of our neighboring districts in the Broome-Tioga-Boces region and what is their true tax rate on $1,000 value. Again, it's kind of what we just went through. When you point, right, $14.66. You can see our neighbors, Owego, Appalachian, New York Valley, right around there. And then you have some of the, again, I'm not going to point out things, but maybe more rural or poverty-driven districts below us. And then Deposit is a little bit outlier too. They get some New York City revenue for the water supply that they provide to New York City. So again, they're kind of an outlier. But I like this slide, and I show this slide because Winnie Point is at the relatively bottom part of this graphic, which shows that, we all hate taxes, right? Whitney Point school tax rate is relatively smaller compared to all these other neighboring districts. Just simple terms. This is in the newsletter every year. People, I think, like this slide, don't like it. I don't know. But this kind of shows you the facts, right? We're going for our increase, the 2.5%, 2.57% that Joanne talked about. We have our current tax rate. Again, if I project out what it will be next year, which I can't quite do yet, I don't have all the warrants from the counties yet, which I will over summer. But projecting it out at this moment, it looks like it'd be roughly a $38 increase on a $100,000 true value property. I'm going to hand this back over to Joanne.
Okay, so as the first few slides are, I know doesn't make it super clear because there's so many different factors that go into funding, the funding that we get, the funding that we need to expend each year. But when we talk about the fact that 3/4 of our budget is in our program, the reality is those costs continue to go up. And what we're projected to get from the state, the kind of state aid funding that funds that programming is really expected to be a little over 1% of an increase this coming year based on what we know about what's happening in Albany. And so the realities are for us that we need to be really, really careful in our spending, that we've been really, as I said, doing some belt tightening, trying to make sure that we're preserving the essential programming for students, that we are making sure that Whitney Point is a place where people want to work and they feel respected and they are have a living wage. While at the same time, the cost of, just like everybody else, the cost of gas, the cost of electricity is all going up. I mean, those are the things that we do, just like we do in our households, to make sure that we can continue to, move forward and fulfill our mission. So when we think about our budget goals, again, always a focus on education, thinking about building a sustainable budget, not just thinking about this year, but thinking about, making sure that we're setting ourselves up in a reasonable way for the future, and also being conscious of the tax levy and the burden that is on our community. So in particular, the things that we pay attention to when we're constructing a budget is maintaining enrichment opportunities and continuing to provide needed supports for all of our students. Supporting a variety of student learning experiences, including opportunities in the arts, career internships, job shadowing, career and technical programs, advanced academic coursework, to make sure that kids who are going to Whitney Point, when they leave Whitney Point, they are as well prepared as students from anywhere for success in life after graduation, no matter what they're going to do. We continue to cultivate partnerships to enhance the offerings we have for our children and families. We have very healthy and strong relationships with lots of different agencies and entities and universities to make sure that we can have a greater impact and offer more things to our community than we would just based on our own budget. We continue to provide our students and community with facilities that are well maintained and support innovative learning and enrichment. And we also continue to implement our $100,000 capital outlay projects to ensure that we're responsible stewards of the community's resources, because the school district is the community's resource and the long-term quality of our school facilities. And so again, with all of that in mind, we are proposing to go out for a 2.57 increase, as has been calculated as the appropriate tax levy cap for us this year. And we hope everybody in the community will support us. The budget proposition shall the Board of Education of the Whitney Point Central School District, you want to read this? Or do you want me to read it? I always feel like this should be the part you read. Shall the Board of Education of the Whitney Point Central School District be authorized to appropriate for the budget the sum of $48,281,457 for the 26-27 school year, and levy the necessary tax therefore, with a projected tax levy increase of 2.57%. That is the question. And the proposition for the election of Board of Education members is,
okay, so the proposition for the election of Board of Education members is three-year terms that are up for election. Currently, they're held by Aubrey Naraki, Thomas Tasber, and Molly Willis. We'll have two candidates on the ballot, and that is Aubrey Naraki and Thomas Tasber. Voters can write in one or up to three write-in candidates. And the terms will commence on July 1st, 2026, and they will be ending June 30th, 2029. And I'm not sure if the next slide's talks about voting. Oh, okay. So voting for the budget, school vehicles, library tax, and school board elections will be held on Tuesday, May 19th from 1 p.m. to 8 p.m. in the Whitney Point High School cafeteria just down the hallway. Voting will be done using voting machines, and this year we'll introduce e-books for signing in, similar to ones you may have seen at the last couple of November elections. If you are not a registered voter, we are asking that you please bring two forms of residency. For example, your state issued ID and a piece of mail.
Okay, and so just for any voters in the room, there have been some changes to New York State law and our reporting regarding elections. And so that's why some of those changes are going to be in place this year to help make sure that we are complying with the new requirements. So our bus proposition for this year, we have a separate proposition which will be placed on the ballot. And that proposition is, shall the Board of Education of the Whitney Point Central School District be authorized to purchase 2 new 71-passenger diesel buses and 2 new 42-passenger wheelchair accessible diesel buses at a cost not to exceed $841,201. And did you know that state aid reimburses the district 90% for most transportation-related expenditures? Good thing, because their buses are pretty expensive. We have 48 DOT-inspected vehicles in our fleet. Our buses annually travel over 575,000 miles, which is the equivalent to driving from Whitney Point to San Diego, California, over 206 times, or 103 round trips. Wouldn't you like to be a bus driver? So as Stacy just outlined, our budget vote will be from 1 to 8 p.m. on May 19th in the high school cafeteria. We will have, if you are not a registered voter, please do bring ID. And our understanding is that when you use the e-books to sign in, that it's actually quick and easy and not really an inconvenience. So I hope you'll come out and vote.
And again, this year we have Aubrey Naraki and Thomas Tasper seeking re-election. Would either of you like to say anything?
So some of you already know me, for those of you who don't, my name is Aubrey Naraki. I am seeking re-election for a second term as trustee for the Board of Education. My husband and I are both Whitney Point alumni. We have 2 children currently in the CPA. I graduated from SUNY Oneonta with a Bachelor in Fine Arts. I am a member of the school's Community Engagement Council, our Bus Life Community Table, the district's strategic planning team, and the PTA. I serve as the board representative for the Race Committee and the Health Insurance Consortium. I attend many additional opportunities as possible to better serve our district, including legislative meetings, budget development workshops, student board member webinars, and the holiday recap. I was a panelist at the Let Us Dream Conference, and I volunteered at the PRA Community Garden. All that to say, the knowledge and understanding that I've gained over the last year has been incredibly impactful and allows me to contribute more meaningfully to these important conversations. It's been an absolute honor to serve our district, and I greatly appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Thomas Tasper. I have lived in the district for over 30 years with my wife, Noreen. I have 3 daughters that have all attended and graduated from Whitney Point. Professionally, I've worked in the community going into schools for close to 40 years. I've had an experience to be able to see and contrast our district compared to other districts. And I've also had the opportunity to be a school board member for a very long time. I have been honored to be able to look at those different districts in our district, try to bring a lot of good to our district as a board member. I've been honored to be on the board for a long time, and I'm looking for support to continue that work. And I respectfully ask you to consider me, and I would thank you.
Thank you. And at this time, if anyone from the public has any questions regarding the budget, we can take those.
we can get that to you. I mean, it's publicly available information. Yeah, it's a lot of money.
Question number two, with increasing costs, right, that are in the business world, what is the long term, so beyond this coming school year, what is the long term goal statewide cost of education?
An excellent question, right?
So what are we gonna do different? Because what we're doing doesn't decrease spending, it may slow spending. Part of the calculation, the town assessments, our townships are becoming more valuable. So there's some dilution factor there. So even though, you're less than 3% tax increase, their tax base is actually bigger this. So, how do we slow this down?
I can answer. I mean, the reality is, as I talk about each year, I mean, we are a unique business because it's all human beings pretty much. And so, you have to be very careful and thoughtful. And we've been talking about this publicly in the district, that we're going to be looking at every opportunity. How do we, tighten our belts more, which may mean bigger class sizes, which means, I mean, we can't not pay people what they deserve to be paid. Who would want to work here? We can't not give people the benefits that they would make in any other school anywhere, because who would want to work here? So we have to think about every possible way that we can make sure that our students, which is our mission, get an education equivalent to anywhere. That you can't, if you're going to graduate from Whitney Point, you need to be able to hold your head high and have the same skills and be ready for life afterwards. But do we do it with bigger class sizes? Do we do it, with like being more strategic in how we, have people? We were looking very hard to not have to be in the boat that a lot of other districts, as you see in the newspaper, are right now, and having to have massive cuts. But looking at every opportunity when we can downsize, watching enrollment very closely and making sure that we're being strategic and not hiring when we possibly can, if we don't ever want to lose anybody, but if we do, that we try to do things like that. I mean, it's in the absolute forefront of our mind. We also are looking at ways to save on health insurance, which has gone up 20% this coming year. So it's hard. It's a struggle to keep that balance of making sure that you're giving kids a quality education, that you're, honoring the hard work of the people who work for the district, but also being fiscally wise. It's going to be tough times. We know that.
Any other questions?
So can I just say, I wanted to say thank you for pointing that out last year. And that, that was, yeah.
Yeah. The district board not happy with that. But it was like, this was a very
Because out of the 1,200 high school. Right, 900. Wow. I got somebody on. 930. Huge support. Really, issue, many years. Nobody had a tough job, and nobody even know it. And I admire their dedication. Staying the heart of every day. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We appreciate it. We're not happy to see ourselves on that list either. And there's, you mentioned that all of those NICET workers, all those people who work in the district, are working very hard to increase those numbers. You know, every day that we have changed our literacy instruction, we've changed our math instruction. We are working very hard from the beginning of school, from the time they come in as pre-K students, to improve those outcomes. We have one mission. And so, yes, that is unacceptable. And, you know, I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into influencing schools, and some with little different demographics might have a little easier, but there is no way being that ranked in that position is acceptable to any of us that work here. So, no, we're with you on that. Not good enough by even a little bit.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, I'll turn the meeting over to Mrs. Champney so that she can suspend the hearing.
The board will suspend the meeting until 1 p.m. on May 19th, 2026, at which time the polls will be opened. Do we have the need for an executive session at this time? Okay, thank you. Correspondence, there was none. Policy discussion.
So I can't log in, but I hope you all can. And I gave Tom a copy. There's a number of policies. As I mentioned, we're working through the special ed policies that had not been reviewed since, well, actually some of them 1991, but most of them 2009, 2010. So there's a cluster today that we're going to look at, and I would propose that at the next meeting we have them ready for first reading. Okay, so the first set of policies are 7613, which is special education programs and related service. The second one is 7615, discipline of students with disabilities. 7617, declassifications of students with disabilities, and 7620, students with disabilities participating in district programs. Now, all of these policies are out of date, inconsistent with regulation, and they are not required. all of them, there are specific regulations and education laws that cover these things, that require us to do them. And then also in some of the policies that we're gonna have for first reading at this meeting, the foundational concepts outlined in these policies are in the new policy. So my proposal for these in particular is to remove them. Again, when you, I mean, sometimes I think that, people think that you should have a ton of different policies to cover yourself, but in a way you get yourself into a problem. Because if they are covering things that can change fairly regularly with regulation, then you get yourself out of compliance with your own policies very quickly. And that's what we've been doing. So I would propose that we not, and that we make sure that we are following what regulation and education law require us to do. So if you can look through those during your leisure time before our next meeting, and if you have any feedback in particular on them, do send them to me, your thoughts or questions, and if you have any concerns about, how it would be covered for something there, I can certainly address it. The next policy is 7612, and that is grouping by similarity of need. And this one, I'm just proposing that we update to have more current language, and it's we're using Erie 1 as the model. And you can read, it's pretty similar to what was there. It's just slightly reworded. The next one is 7616, which is least restrictive environment. This is a required policy. I just used Erie 1 policy, and I tweaked the language a little bit because even their language was a little outdated, just to make it a little bit more inclusive. But yes, this is a required policy, and obviously a very important foundational feature of special ed. The next one is the provision of interpreter services to parents who are hearing impaired. Again, this has not been reviewed since 2009. The proposed policy from Erie 1 is exactly the same. So I would just like to keep this policy and update it and say that it's still appropriate and it's still what we do, and just have noted that we reviewed it in 2026. Okay. The next policy is 7673, and that was our RTI policy. And we did not have a policy that we are required to have, which was a pre-referral intervention policy, which really the RTI policy was sort of addressing, although that language, I wrote that policy, but it is very out of date. From 2010, and I'm proposing to replace it with this pre-referral intervention strategies policy, which essentially covers what was outlined in the old RTI policy. You would now call it MTSS, and just covers other areas that are required by law. So if you could look at that policy, I'd appreciate it. And that's it. Okay. Thank you for your patience with all of this.
Well, thank you for the work that you put in going over all of these and making it easy for us to follow along. Okay, policies for first reading. The first one is to approve policy 7614, preschool special education program, updated for first reading. May I have a motion? Thank you, Tom. And a second? Thank you, Benny. And do we have any questions or comments?
I'm just going to add that this is a required policy, and it's an update.
Did anybody have any questions or suggested changes for these? Okay, all those in favor for approving for first reading? Any opposed? Any abstain? Next one is, policy 7609, section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, updated for first reading. May I have a motion? Thank you, Aubrey. And a second? Is that you, Michelle? Thank you. You're so far away. Right? Okay.
So this is a required policy. This is an update, and I believe in your electronic copy, you should see the replacement of the his or her. Aubrey, I don't know if you can see it. I can't log in. But there were two his or hers in there. We just updated that language too.
I'm looking at what's on here and it says new proposed policy and I just found.
A his or her?
Yep, first page, bottom of the third paragraph down.
Is that currently in the board though?
Yeah.
All right, well, I did change it in the policy, but maybe I didn't get it loaded in right.
Okay, I know that there was
So we have,
difficulty
there's,
getting stuff.
but that is, well, I like did it at 15 minutes before, like you came to my office. So
Okay.
maybe I didn't hit save, but I said though, we have that would change, so that will be changed in this policy.
Any questions from the board? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, policy 7611, children with handicapping conditions, updated for first reading.
So
We need to get a motion first.
okay.
It's okay. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Benny, and was that you, Aubrey? Okay.
Thank you. All right, so that policy was last reviewed in 2009, and we already removed 7650, which had outdated language in it, and we are proposing to create this new policy, which is just students with disabilities, which includes information that obviously that all students are entitled to be part, whether you're a student with a disability or not, involved in all programming in the school, and outlines everything that was in these old policies and some of the other ones that we just had removed. But not in a way, it just kind of goes over what the requirements are that we have to have in there, what the foundational principles are, and I think for the most part, does not include things that change often in regulation. And then we talked about the parentally placed. Parentally placed is the term that state ed uses. It is what's in regulation. But so I try to weave in the term in quotes because that's their term, and then just say like by their parent / legal guardian, because that's the language that we prefer to use. So if you could go through the newer version of that and make sure that I have those changes, and I believe I changed also the his or hers. Anywhere that was in this one. Oh, no, that was in the other one. So.
Any questions from the board? All those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstain? Approve the removal of policy 7620, students with handicap participating in school programs. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Tom. And a second? Thank you, Michelle.
So, as I said, that policy is now covered under the new 761.
Okay. Any questions from the board? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Next is policy 7660, parent involvement for first reading. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Benny. And a second? that you, Aubrey?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay,
So this policy was from 2009, and we are proposing to update it to family involvement for children with disabilities, as outlined in the new proposed policy that you have.
will the title of this one change as well?
Well, it says family, parent family.
Right, it does there, but up top.
Oh, yeah, and the top, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions from the board? All those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstain? That brings us to policies for second reading. There are none.
It hasn't been 30 days.
Right. That does bring us to the first opportunity for comments from the public. Please understand that there is a second opportunity towards the end of the meeting. We do have some guidelines. Each speaker will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes and the entire public comment period to a maximum of 30 minutes. This may be waived by a majority vote of the board. The board requests that each speaker stand, state their name, residency, and topic of discussion. By law, the board will not permit any public statements regarding individual students or employees. And please be advised that while the board takes public comment very seriously, we are not allowed to comment or respond during the meeting, as this is our opportunity to hear from our stakeholders. Items brought to the attention of the board will be taken under consideration for future responses or action, or the proper staff member will get back to you at the appropriate time. Is there anybody who would like to speak at this time? Okay, as I said, there is a second opportunity at the end of the meeting. Commendations.
Okay, varsity softball athlete Olivia Summers for pitching her 500th career strikeout as a varsity pitcher in her sixth varsity season. Congratulations, Olivia. High school physics teacher, Mr. Leek, and the Whitney Point robotics team for representing our school at the 15th annual SUNY Broom robotics competition on Tuesday, April 21st. Whitney Point Freshman Academy students for assembling give back bags filled with essentials and heartfelt notes for individuals experiencing homelessness in Broome County. Varsity lacrosse athlete Caden Sears for being named WVNG 12 Sports Athlete of the Week. Congratulations. CEAs, Ms. Grimes, Ms. Driscoll, Mrs. Whitaker, Mr. Klein, Mrs. Burke, Mr. Burke, the Burks for everything they do, for being everywhere all the time, for doing everything. Our very talented CEA students and their families for a wonderful talent show held on Thursday, April 30th. Well, it was actually 2 days, right? Ms. Guyton and the TRA administrators, faculty, staff, and students for successfully raising $2,801.98 through their Change for Hope fundraiser for Griffin's Guardians.
Very nice. We do not have a student board member present tonight, so there will be no report. Old business, there is none. That brings us to the consent agenda. May I have a motion? Thank you, Tom. And a second? Thank you, Benny. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay. We have the last day of school information. The last day of school for all students pre-K through 8 will be a half day on Tuesday, June 23rd, 2026. The last instructional day for high school students will be a full day, on Tuesday, June 16th, 2026. The last day for faculty will be on Friday, June 26th. The last day for the staff unit aides, and food service workers will be a full day on Tuesday, June 23rd, 2026. The architect services agreement for architect and engineering services with Ashley McGraw Architects for the anticipated 2026 to 2027 capital outlay project at a cost not to exceed $15,000. May I have a motion? Thank you, Michelle. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstain? Seeker determination for proposed project. Resolution of the Board of Education of the Whitney Point Central School District regarding a State Environmental Quality Review Act determination for the proposed project. At the regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Whitney Point Central School District, Broome County, New York, held at 10 Kybel Road, Whitney Point, New York at 6 p.m. on the 5th day of May 2026. Whereas the Board of Education of the Whitney Point Central School District Board is proposing to undertake a $100,000 capital outlay project consisting of construction and renovations, including incidentals and expenses relating to select masonry restoration at the TF Neoga Riverside Academy, the project. And whereas the board wishes to fully comply with its obligations under the State Environmental Quality Review Act, SEQR, and the regulations thereunder with respect to the proposed action, and whereas the board has carefully considered the nature and scope of the proposed action, now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education of the Whitney Point Central School District, Broome County, New York as follows. Section 1, the proposed action involves construction and renovations, including incidentals and expenses relating to select masonry restoration of the TF Neoga Riverside Academy. Section 2, the Board of Education hereby declares itself lead agency pursuant to SEQR. Section 3, the review will not be a coordinated review. Section 4, the proposed project represents the replacement, rehabilitation, or reconstruction of a structure or facility in kind on the same site within the meaning of 6 NYC RR 617.5, Section C2, and or represents routine activities of educational institutions, including expansion of existing facilities by less than 10,000 square feet of gross floor area within the meaning of Section C NYC RR 617.5, Section C11. Section 5, the proposed action is a type 2 action within the meaning of 6 NYC RR 617.5 and is therefore not subject to review under SEQR and the regulations thereunder. Resolved that this resolution shall take effect immediately. May I have a motion? Thank you, Benny. And a second? Thank you, Michelle. Any questions or comments? Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstain? Superintendent update.
I think the only big update is that it's an action-packed next month. If you want to see kids doing wonderful things, we've got, if you look, there's a list of dates here. There's all sorts of things happening almost every night of the week. Hopefully the weather will cooperate and let's see. Yeah, everything, there's all sorts of things happening. So, you know, board members, please join and celebrate our students.
Okay, that brings us to our second opportunity for comments from the public. I'm not going to read everything again because I'm sure everybody heard it the first time. Is there anybody who would like to speak at this time? Okay, Board of Education comments. I know that there's a reminder that we need to make sure that we're looking at the board evaluation, our self-evaluation that we need to do because we need to complete that prior to doing the superintendent's evaluation, which of course we would ideally like to have done first meeting in the meeting in June. So everybody needs to make sure they're paying attention to that. Does any other board members have something they want to bring up?
I had one thing. Today, I was lucky enough to be on a field trip for the 4th grade at the TRA. They were raising eels in their classroom this year, and they released them. And it was a nice day. There were 6 different rotations they went through, including New York State DEC, the Upper Susquehanna Coalition, and Portland County Soil and Water. They went through different stations. They released their eels. There were also some students from the Onondaga School, and the students were talked to by one of the people in the group that was from the eel clan, taught them some native language and also about the importance of the eels. So it was a really neat day, and a lot of the kids had a lot of good fun, and it was pretty amazing.
And I think you're on the news, right? WICZ.
They were going to be on, they were on channel 40. So I didn't see it tonight, but it should be on again. So
How many eels did they release?
that class had 10.
Okay.
So, yep. And I think that they limited to 10 classes per year.
Mhm.
And so, but it was a really neat experience, and it was just, what a nice thing.
So, do any other board members have comments or? Okay. Do we have the need for an executive session
do.
afterwards? Okay. What will we be discussing?
Specific personnel.
Okay, we'll be discussing specific personnel. Just as a note, when we go into executive session, when we are done, we will go back into public meeting and then we will end the meeting, so nobody has to hang around and wait for us to finish. Students, make sure that the top of your sheet is filled out, and any one of us at this table can fill those out for you. So we are going to go into executive session at 7:07 p.m. May I have a motion? Thank you, Michelle. And a second? Thank you, Benny. All those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, thank you very much for everybody who attended tonight.